the most disturbing encounters with evil. Our first story comes from Reddit user Casey42. A little girl was playing in my mother's room. It was an older house, so the walls were very thin. She heard what sounded like screams in the next room. My mom opened the door and saw my sister kneeling on the floor while her teddy bear was on the bed with its eyes cut out and a smile carved into it with a knife. This happened multiple times over the course of a few weeks. One time my dad came home early from work and heard what sounded like screams coming from my mom's room. He ran in and found my sister sitting on the bed with a porcelain doll in her hands, eyes wide with terror. The doll's head had been smashed in with a heavy object. My dad immediately called my mom at work to ask what the hell was going on. And then later that day, after my mom picked us up from my grandparents' house, she took us to the local church where she made us confess our sins before God. Apparently, my sister wasn't allowed to play in that room anymore and was grounded for 3 days. That was the last straw for my mom. We never went back to that church again. And this is the only time I've ever seen my dad cry. After he hugged my mom and told her everything was okay, he quietly left the house. He didn't even say goodbye or tell us where he was going. I haven't seen him since. I think he went to go get help. Well, that's messed up. I hope that man gets some kind of help, because that situation doesn't sound healthy at all. But there's no way that little girl was playing with those dolls and teddy bears, right? They were possessed. Oh my God. Moving on, we have a video to show you guys. Let's move on to another scary Reddit post. This one's from a user named Ghost of Zardom. This happened to a relative of mine in Russia in the early 1980s. There was no electricity, and they were sleeping in a wooden hut. Suddenly, my relative awoke to find herself kneeling beside her grandmother's corpse, with blood pouring from her mouth. Horrified, she stumbled out of the hut to find her father, who had also been sleeping in the hut, standing nearby with blood on his hands. In a trance-like state, my relative's father beckoned for her to come closer. And when she leaned in, he whispered, "Get in." Startled by her father's tone of voice, she asked what was happening and how her grandmother died. Her father didn't respond. He just kept beckoning for her to get in. Unsure of what to do, she complied and got in. They drove to a location far away from their home and stopped in front of a house that looked exactly like hers. Confused, my relative's father helped her carry her grandmother inside and lay her to rest on her bed. They did not speak during the ride back home. And upon arriving, my relative noticed her father had blood on his clothes. Alarmed, she asked him what had happened to her grandmother. And this time he responded, "She's gone now." He explained that she died during the night, and he carried her to the other house to bury her alive. It took several minutes for my relative to realize that her father had buried her grandmother alive, and he had brought her back home to prevent anyone from finding out. They buried the grandmother the following morning, and no one knows what happened to the father. I bet you didn't see that one coming. That is terrifying, and I feel bad for that woman. I mean, she woke up to find her grandmother dead, so she must have felt awful, and then her dad did something terrible to hide it. Finally, we have a Reddit post from a user named Slinky. I was changing a light bulb in the hallway of my apartment when I noticed that one of the mailboxes had what looked like blood dripping from the bottom of it. I thought it was weird, but I figured it was probably just paint. So I went to check my own mailbox, and when I opened it, it was full of bloody meat. I closed the door quickly and tried to wipe my hands on my pants. But once I opened the door again, there was more bloody meat. I ran to the bathroom, washed my hands, locked the door, and called my boyfriend. After I explained what had happened, I told him I was scared to go back out. He told me to stay in the bathroom while he investigated. A few seconds later, he yelled, "There's meat all over the hallway. I guess someone had put it there." And I remember thinking how weird it was that there was meat all over the place, but no one was outside trying to collect it. Well, I'll be damned. Someone had apparently taken all the meat and placed it in front of my apartment. And when I finally gathered the courage to open the door, there were thousands of tiny little pebbles on my welcome mat. I stepped on them, and they crunched under my feet, like when you crush a bunch of ice cubes together. And that's when I realized I had stepped on some of the pebbles and crushed them. I rushed to the bathroom and stared at my feet. They were covered in blood. Oh my God, and there was blood everywhere. I screamed for my boyfriend, who called the police, and we both stayed in the bathroom until they arrived. The officer asked if I knew anyone who would want to hurt me, and I told him I had no idea. I had never had any problems at that apartment complex, and I had no enemies. The officer then asked if I had recently read any books on demonology. I told him I hadn't, and he looked relieved. According to the officer, there was a series of apartments where people had committed suicide, murder-suicide, and other horrible crimes. But sometimes the most terrifying things aren't always supernatural. Stay tuned for more videos on the scariest real-life horror stories. I'm the host,